Ruth Harper tugged at her gray cashmere sweater sleeve as she stood at the entrance of Caroline's magnificent mansion. Crystal chandeliers bathed the entryway in warm light, and fresh white roses perfumed the air. This elegant setting was worlds apart from Ruth's modest townhouse. "I should have worn something different," Ruth whispered to herself, smoothing her simple black skirt. At 45, Ruth had never been interested in luxury fashion despite having the means. She valued comfort over designer labels, substance over style. A server approached with champagne. Ruth accepted a glass with a warm smile. She hadn't seen Caroline since their college days more than 20 years ago, but they had reconnected online recently. Caroline had insisted Ruth attend her dinner party, eager to catch up with her old friend. "Caroline will join you shortly," the server informed her. "The other guests are already in the dining room." Ruth nodded and made her way toward the sounds of conversation and laughter. As she entered the opulent dining room, the chatter briefly stopped. 6 women in designer clothing sat around a table gleaming with fine china and crystal. Each wore expensive jewelry and perfectly styled hair. Their practiced eyes quickly assessed Ruth's simple appearance with unmistakable judgment. "You must be Caroline's friend." A blonde woman wearing pearls broke the silence, her voice sweet but her eyes cold. "Yes, I'm Ruth Harper. Caroline and I were roommates in college." "How charming," another woman replied, her tone suggesting it was anything but. "I'm Victoria. Please join us." Ruth took the empty seat, placing her small handbag beside her plate. She felt the discreet exchange of glances around the table. "Caroline mentioned you're in furniture," Victoria said, pronouncing the last word as if examining a peculiar specimen. "Yes, that's right," Ruth answered simply. Years of experience had taught her that people's reactions to wealth revealed more about them than any resume could. "That must be interesting," offered a woman with a dazzling diamond bracelet. "I'm Diane, by the way. My husband's in real estate development. He just closed a $40 million deal on the East Side," she added with practiced casualness. Ruth smiled politely. "That sounds impressive." The women launched into discussions of their husbands' business ventures, their charity boards, designer, purchases, and upcoming vacations. Ruth listened quietly, occasionally sipping her champagne. "And what about you, Ruth?" Victoria finally asked. "What brings you back to town?" "Furniture shopping," Ruth said with a gentle laugh at her own joke, which the others joined half-heartedly. "Actually, I'm here for a few meetings." What Ruth didn't mention was that those meetings were with her investment team about diversifying the enormous windfall from selling her company 6 months ago. "Oh, meetings! How exciting!" Diane drawled, exchanging amused glances with Victoria. Ruth observed them calmly. She'd encountered this before. Immediate dismissal based on appearances. Once it would have bothered her, but she'd learned long ago that true worth wasn't measured in designer labels or status symbols. As the dinner progressed without Caroline, Victoria leaned forward, her diamond earrings catching the light. "Tell us more about this furniture business of yours. Do you have a little shop somewhere?" The dismissive tone wasn't lost on Ruth. "I design custom pieces," Ruth answered simply. She could have mentioned her company's international presence or the celebrity clients who commissioned her work, but years of being underestimated had taught her the value of humility. "How quaint," Victoria replied with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "I think my housekeeper's daughter does something similar. Crafts, right?" Laughter rippled around the table. "I imagine it must be difficult," Diane interjected, her voice dripping with insincere sympathy. "Such a competitive market. My husband always says retail is a brutal business." Ruth took a sip of champagne. "It has its challenges." "But surely it's just a hobby," pressed Victoria. "Something to keep you busy." Another woman, Bethany, glanced at Ruth's unadorned hands. "No wedding ring? Never found time for family between all the furniture making?" "I chose to focus on my business," Ruth explained calmly. Victoria shared a look with Diane. "Well, We all make our choices. Some of us are just fortunate enough to have options. She adjusted her pearl necklace with manicured fingers. Throughout dinner, the subtle jabs continued. The women questioned Ruth's career choice, her simple clothing, and her apparent lack of status symbols. Ruth remained composed, answering their questions with quiet dignity, while revealing little about her true circumstances. "Your sweater is quite comfortable looking," Bethany observed, her gaze lingering on Ruth's simple gray cashmere. "Is that a fashion choice?" Ruth's lips curved slightly. "I prefer simplicity." "Simplicity?" Victoria echoed, exchanging glances with Diane. "Well, not everyone can pull off couture, or afford it," murmured someone else, just loudly enough to be heard. Ruth brushed an invisible crumb from her sleeve, unbothered. Her sweater, though understated, was actually handcrafted by an elderly artisan whose work she'd admired for years. It had cost more than Victoria's flashy dress, but Ruth saw no need to point this out. As the evening progressed, the women continued to showcase their wealth and status. They discussed waterfront properties worth millions, charity galas they chaired, and designer items they'd acquired. Each time they attempted to include Ruth in these conversations, they did so with thinly veiled condescension, clearly expecting her to either admit to modest means or make unconvincing attempts to match their opulence. During dessert, a server approached Ruth discreetly. "Excuse me, Miss Harper. There's a call for you. The gentleman says it's urgent." Ruth frowned slightly. "Thank you. I'll take it in the hall." As she stood, Victoria raised an eyebrow. "Business emergency with a furniture delivery?" The table tittered with laughter as Ruth stepped away. In the hallway, she took the phone. "Ruth Harper speaking. Miss Harper, it's Alan from Westfield Trust. I apologize for disturbing your evening, but we need your approval on the transfer of funds for tomorrow's acquisition. It's the 8-figure transaction we discussed." Ruth glanced back toward the dining room. "Yes, that's fine. Please proceed as planned." "Excellent. The paperwork will be ready for your signature tomorrow at 10. Again, sorry to interrupt your evening." As Ruth handed the phone back to the waiting server, the young man hesitated before speaking. "Miss Harper, if you don't mind me asking, are you the Ruth Harper? The one who designed the Meridian collection?" Surprised, Ruth nodded. "Yes, that's me." The young man's eyes widened. "My mother saved for 3 years to buy one of your coffee tables. She says it's the most beautiful thing she's ever owned." Ruth smiled warmly. "That's very kind. What's your mother's name? I'd be happy to send her something from our new collection." "Really? Her name is Grace Martinez. She would absolutely—" "There you are, Ruth." Diane's voice cut through the moment as she appeared in the hallway. "We were beginning to think you'd escaped through a window." Her eyes flicked dismissively to the server, who quickly excused himself. When they returned to the table, the mockery continued. The women questioned Ruth's clothing choices more directly now, suggesting her simple style indicated she couldn't afford better. Victoria began showcasing her diamond bracelet, calling it museum quality, and making pointed remarks about passing down heirlooms to future generations. Another dig at Ruth's apparent childlessness. Just as the atmosphere grew unbearably tense, Caroline finally entered the dining room. She swept in with confident grace, her blonde hair perfectly styled, her black dress elegant yet understated. Unlike the other women, her only jewelry was a simple strand of pearls. "I'm so sorry I'm late. Everyone! The caterer had a mini-crisis that needed my attention," she announced, then broke into a warm smile when she spotted Ruth. "Ruth, you made it!" She hurried over to embrace Ruth genuinely, a display of affection that contrasted sharply with the cool reception Ruth had received. Victoria cleared her throat. "We've been entertaining your friend, Caroline. Such an interesting background she has." Caroline's eyes narrowed slightly as she glanced around the table, clearly sensing the atmosphere. "I hope everyone's been making Ruth feel welcome." An awkward silence followed, broken by Diane's overly bright, Of course. We've been fascinated hearing about her furniture hobby. Caroline's eyebrows shot up. Hobby? She looked at Ruth in confusion. Did you not tell them? Ruth shrugged slightly. It didn't come up. Tell us what? Victoria asked, her curiosity piqued despite herself. Caroline looked around the table in genuine surprise. You mean none of you recognize Ruth Harper? The Ruth? Harper? Blank stares met her question. Caroline laughed in disbelief. Ladies, Ruth isn't just in furniture. She founded Harper Designs, one of the most successful furniture companies in the country. Her pieces are in museums. Victoria's smile froze on her face. Harper Designs? The luxury furniture brand? The very same, Caroline confirmed. In fact, Victoria, that console table in your entryway that you bragged about last month, that's one of Ruth's designs. Victoria's face paled visibly. But that table cost a fortune. Yes, Caroline finished for her. Ruth's work always does. And speaking of fortunes, she turned to Ruth with a grin. Should I tell them, or would you like to? Ruth shook her head slightly, but Caroline was already continuing. Ruth recently sold her company for $750 million. Cash deal. It was in all the business news last month. The silence that followed was deafening. 6 pairs of eyes stared at Ruth in disbelief, mentally recalculating everything they had assumed about the quiet woman in the simple gray sweater. $750 million? Bethany finally whispered, her voice cracking slightly. Actually, it was 752, Ruth corrected softly. But who's counting? Victoria's champagne glass nearly slipped from her fingers. But your clothes, you don't look rich. I never saw the point in flashy displays of wealth, Ruth explained. I prefer to let my work speak for itself. Diane was now staring at Ruth's simple sweater with new eyes. That's not just any cashmere, is it? Ruth smiled slightly. It's hand-loomed by a master craftsman in Scotland. He only makes 12 pieces a year. The phone call, Victoria said suddenly, comprehension dawning. That wasn't about a furniture delivery. Investment portfolio, Ruth confirmed. We're diversifying after the sale. Caroline was watching the reactions with barely concealed delight. Did I mention Ruth's philanthropic work? The children's wing at Memorial Hospital? That was her donation. Anonymously, of course. $20 million, Ruth admitted reluctantly. They needed a new oncology department. Victoria's mouth opened and closed without sound. Just minutes earlier, she'd been boasting about raising $2 million for charity. But you never said anything, Margaret finally managed. All evening, while we were being completely condescending, Caroline supplied helpfully. Yes, I noticed that when I walked in. Not our finest moment as hostesses, ladies, Ruth shrugged. I've never been one to flaunt success. In business, being underestimated often works to my advantage. Well, Victoria said, attempting to recover her composure. This is certainly a surprise. Had we known, you'd have treated me differently, Ruth finished for her. That's precisely why I didn't mention it. People reveal their true character when they think they have nothing to gain from you. The table fell silent as the implications of her words sank in. The atmosphere transformed instantly. The women who had been so quick to judge Ruth based on her appearance were now stumbling over themselves to re-establish a connection. I've always admired entrepreneurs, Victoria said, her voice honeyed with newfound respect. The dedication it takes to build something from nothing is truly admirable. Ruth merely nodded, neither accepting nor rejecting this sudden change of heart. My summer home actually has several pieces from your collection, Bethany added eagerly. The craftsmanship is exquisite. I should have recognized your name immediately. You've only ordered through designers, Ruth pointed out quietly. We've never actually met. As the evening concluded, the women competed for Ruth's attention, offering business collaborations and social invitations. Ruth remained gracious but distant, recognizing the hollow nature of their sudden interest. Standing on Caroline's porch while waiting for her car, Ruth reflected on the evening. Caroline joined her, handing her a light wrap against the evening. Chill. I'm sorry about tonight, Caroline said softly. I had no idea they would behave that way. Ruth smiled. Don't apologize. It was illuminating, actually. Still, Caroline sighed. The way they changed once they knew about your success. It was almost grotesque. Ruth nodded, gazing out at the manicured gardens illuminated by strategic landscape lighting. Money doesn't change who we are. It just amplifies what's already there. And what about you? Caroline asked. Has your fortune changed you? Ruth considered this. I don't think so. I still value the same things. Honesty, creativity, treating people with dignity regardless of what they can offer me. Her car appeared at the end of the driveway. A modest sedan rather than the luxury vehicle her wealth could easily afford. That's why you'll always be rich. In ways they can't understand, Caroline said, embracing her friend. As Ruth drove away, she reflected on the evening. Those women had everything society claimed was important: status, luxury, connections. Yet they seemed desperately unhappy, constantly comparing, judging, scrambling for position. True wealth, Ruth had learned long ago, wasn't measured in dollars or possessions. It was found in purpose, integrity, and the courage to remain authentic, even when others dismissed you. Tonight was a reminder of why she'd always chosen substance over appearance, compassion over competition, and the quiet satisfaction of staying true to herself over the hollow validation of society's applause. What truly matters isn't what we have, but who we are when no one's looking.